Greetings, peaceful undead, and mostly evil spirits. Hey guys, I'm back. Good news is, I'm beginning to see the end of the tunnel where my personal life stuff is concerned, so hopefully I can get back to regular content soon. Bad news is I'm not going to make any promises because my life is in a state of upheaval in other areas. So we'll get back to regular content when we get back to it. But I promised this video to a guy. I was gonna try to get it to him before Halloween, and I'm just terrible at keeping timelines. But here we are. So, without further ado, let's get into the review of The Oathkeeper's Servant by Zach Kuhl. I hope I'm saying your name right, sir. Zach Kuhl. Kuhl. I don't know how else you would say it. So, this is a YA horror, and I gotta say, it is the first YA I think I've ever read. I've never, even when I was like a teen, I didn't really read YA very much. I mostly just picked up adult stuff. Like, I read the complete Book of Swords when I was like 10. So that tells you that I've never really been into YA reading. I just kind of skipped right to what adults read. And I think there might be some things that I'm not fully accepting about the YA category that are coloring my review. You know, I might be putting some of my personal reading expectations on YA, and if that's going on, then you have to keep that in mind, because again, I'm not a YA reader, but I was asked to review it, and actually, no, you know what? Now that I think about it, I have reviewed another YA book on this channel. It was the one with the kid who gets genetically mutated by his dad, and he's kind of a vampire, and the girl is kind of a werewolf. Can't remember the name of that book, but it was actually not too bad, and that was YA. So okay. All right. Now, for those of you who might be new, who might be finding my channel for the first time, we have a review system around here. My review system is comp, characters, originality, message, plot, prose. Those are the categories that I rate on. Those are the things that I value when I read a book. And I think by looking at those 5 categories, you really get a solid idea of the overall quality of the book, the author's strengths, and everything the book has to offer and where it was lacking. So that's my review system. And without further ado, let's get into it. So I'm looking at my notes here, and oh boy. I do want to say, just really quick, to Zach, thank you for being a fan of this channel. And I respect that you're a watcher of the channel, and you are aware that sometimes I do give harsh reviews when I feel they're earned, and yet you sent me your book anyways. And so I respect that you're willing to open yourself up to critique and step into the arena. So I have personal respect for you. Just let that stick in your head. So we're going to start with the beginning of the system. Characters, okay? The characters in this book fell kind of flat for me, because all of them felt one-dimensional. They felt very much like characters in a story who existed inside the story solely to fulfill their role in the story. They weren't alive. They weren't fleshed out. They were not multi-dimensional. They were characters, and you were painfully aware of that, in my opinion, especially because of the dialogue. The dialogue was so unrealistic. I have a specific example here that just really stuck out. Page 85 one of the main characters, one of the main group, I think it was actually Cassie, who's the main character. She says, "Some time ago." When have you ever heard a 13-year-old girl say "some time ago"? Unless she's a British honors student, that's not how girls who are 14 talk. It just doesn't happen. It may have been about a decade since I was in high school, but I have a fairly decent memory for how the average teenage girl talks. My niece is getting to that age. The dialogue in this book needed so much work. And I really wonder to myself if the author has ever spent any significant amount of time around teenagers in general, but especially around teenage girls. You know, it's like, have you ever watched like a teen focused movie or like a teen focused show? Like, did you do any market research? I don't want to beat this dead horse too much, but just the dialogue needed so much work. Whew. And then one other place that I thought dialogue was just sorely lacking in execution was there was quite a bit of villain exposition. We got most of our information about the villain from the villain, which is very ham-handed in my opinion. Very lazy way of doing things. And it was so clunky and obvious that, hey, this is an exposition dump. Like 2 sentences in, I was like, oh, this is going to be 2 or 3 paragraphs of exposition dump. And it was. I did not care for it. And I don't think most people would. Especially because the lore around the villain, despite the fact that he went on and on about it, there wasn't actually much meat to it. There wasn't much solid, tangible information. And so we came away from this exposition going, okay, so what the fuck is your point? So, the whole thing, the whole section of villain exposition was just flat for me. And the characters being one note, one dimensional, very much caricatures of teens and parents and older brothers. You know, all of the characters really are caricatures. And the dialogue being so bad, this category gets 50%, a failing grade. Next, we move on to originality. And there's a nugget of originality here. The monster of this book, to sum it up in my words, is pedophile ghostwriter. And that's not technically accurate because a pedophile is someone who's attracted to a prepubescent child, whereas hebophiles are attracted to post-pubescent children. So really, it's hebophile ghostwriter, but no one makes the distinction in our culture, so it's just easier to say pedophile ghostwriter. So, yeah, that's the monster, pedophile ghostwriter. But that is the most original thing about the book. And it really, it was a concept that could have worked. It could have, but it needed better execution. It needed more polish. It did not get it. So, originality, 65%, swing and a miss for me. Next category, message and symbolism. This is the only category that gets a passing grade for me, because overwhelmingly to me, the takeaway message of this story is twofold. One, don't fuck with things you don't understand. Don't go screwing with the supernatural, which I believe in real life, and I think is a very sound thing to do, to not go screwing with it when you have no idea what's up. the message of don't go fucking with things you don't understand is sound no matter what you apply it to. The second message is always fight back. The protagonist in this book is against pretty overwhelming odds, put in a situation that she's completely foreign to, which is part of why the characters category takes such a hit, by the way, because this is an average teen girl, and it's made very clear that this is your average teen girl, and yet she just does these remarkable things that, in terms of her willpower and determination. Just as an example, she's given a piece of advice by a spirit to clear her mind to slow down the poisoning effects of the monster's influence on her. What 14-year-old girl can clear their mind? It takes Buddhist monks decades to learn how to do that. It's not an easy trick. Sitting there and truly just having a blank slate in your head, it's virtually impossible. If you've tried to do it for any length of time, you know that. A 14-year-old girl is not going to learn to do that like that. It's just not going to happen. And so, to wind back to characters for a moment, that's another reason why the characters category took such a hit. The suspension of disbelief on what this 14-year-old girl is able to do is just absurd. And then you throw in the stuff about the dark web, and it's like, oh, she magically figured out the dark web in like a day. No, she didn't. Overall, message and symbolism gets a 70%. The category loses points for being ham-handed. As I said, I'm kind of, just to be blunt and honest, I'm unimpressed with the writing of the whole book overall. And so, the messages that I really agree with and that I think are important took a hit because they were just not delivered well. So next, we move on to plot. And the plot was very much a by-the-numbers horror movie plot. You know what I mean? Like, regular town, regular people are introduced. Then protagonist and friends get wild hair up their ass to do X thing. X thing goes horribly wrong. Summons monster. Monster proceeds to fuck shit up. And it just, beat by beat by beat, was exactly the typical horror movie script. Except it's a book. And there was nothing surprising. There was no twist. There was nothing that I was like, whoa, that's neat, or anything like that. So, I mean, the plot wasn't terrible, but it was just so aggressively average for me. 50% on plot. And now here is perhaps the coup de grace of this whole thing. The final nail in the coffin. I'm so sorry, Zach. I do not like giving bad reviews. Especially to people who reach out to me and send me their book and, ask for my honest opinion. I really want to like them. But, I have to be honest. So prose. By far, prose is the area that needed the most work. And I don't mean any offense to the author personally when I say this. I really don't mean any personal offense here. This is strictly a professional critique. But in the About Author section of the book, it says the author has a creative writing degree from Western Michigan U. I would be demanding a refund from that university. The prose in this book are highly bland. There's nothing creative or flowery or unique or interesting about the language at all. And you could tell the places where he was kind of trying to, and it didn't take. It was like casting your fishing line over and over again and never getting a bite. At least that's what it felt like for me. The prose were as bland as an unsalted Triscuit. just you're sitting there the whole time, blank faced, just like, yes, she did sit in the chair. You know what I mean? Oh, God. So, another reason prose takes such a hit, gets such a bad score, is because there are places where they were just inconsistent or poorly written from a practical and knowledge standpoint. So there were a few places where I noticed typos. Page 47, it says he titled his head. That was clearly supposed to be tilted. Page 51, fourth paragraph, the word was supposed to be avert, not advert. Okay. This speaks to the prose and the characters category. Page 40, the main character is sent to therapy by her parents for what happens to her from her initial encounter with the monster. And the way the therapist engaged with the main character was, again, just an extreme caricature of what happens in therapy. And as someone who's been to 5 therapists in his life, I'm pretty sound in my opinion that that's not actually how therapists engage with people. I can speak from experience that the first 2 or 3 sessions with a therapist is almost entirely them getting to know you, and that is not how that was depicted. And oh man, sorry, I know I keep jumping back and forth from categories here, but as is the nature of writing, all of the categories are interrelated because they all need to fuse together to form one cohesive whole. Another thing that kind of fits into prose and plot is, I mentioned it previously, the main character, Cassie, just suddenly gets an itch to research this monster on the dark web, and she begins looking into how to use it and instantly figures out how to use the dark web. And as someone who knows how to use the dark web a little bit, I can tell you it's not super easy. There's no index of websites. There's no place you can go to find all the places super easily. So unless she knew someone who could give her some tips and tricks, she would not have figured it out that fast. And so for me, the dark web thing in this book rises to plot hole levels. To keep hammering on prose, just to give you an idea of why I gave it such a bad score. There's a place where the monster has a machete, and then it suddenly turns into an axe. There's a place where he has a hatchet, and that suddenly turns into an axe. And for those of you who don't know the difference, a hatchet is a hand axe. They vary between like that long and that long, okay? They're meant for chopping branches off stuff, like little branches like that thick. You take the hatchet and you clear a log for whatever reason, or other similar tasks like that. An axe is a full-length motherfucking axe used to chop trees. They're not the same thing. They're not interchangeable. There's a few things like that. For example, towards the end of the book, when one of the characters is using a gun, the phrase "unload the canister" appears. And anyone who knows anything about guns knows that's not proper. I am unaware of a single commercial firearm that fires from a canister, especially when we're talking about a handgun. Handguns fire from magazines. I think maybe a few commercially available handguns fire from a clip, not a canister. So, the pros were in sore need of polish and more research and more attention. They really needed it. So, 40% on pros. And the best advice I can give here is find a good editor, man. Find a good editor. I can tell you, if you worked with my editor and paid her for a developmental service, your prose would have been elevated to at least 70, if not 100%. And I'm not saying that to like plug my editor or anything. I'm just stating the fact that a good editor can save a book. I don't know if you used an editor, but if you didn't, you should have. So, there you go. Overall, the final score for the book is 55 out of 100. Obviously, that is a failing grade. And I just want to stress, I'm not doing this to pick on the author personally. I respect that he sent me the book for critique and review. And I just cannot stress that it's nothing personal. I just have to be honest. It is what it is. You know what I mean? My personal advice to the author would be, forget everything you thought you knew about writing and go read some of like the great masterworks of literature. Go read Tolkien, go read C.S. Lewis, go read Christopher Paolini, go read Pierce Brown, go read Stephen King. Read people who are undeniably masterful at this craft. I would even be so arrogant and prideful as to throw my own name in that hat. Okay? Just because of the great reviews I get. Go read the work of people who are truly great at this craft and emulate them a little bit and see why great books are great. Because what they taught you in university is not working for you, bud. And that's the best advice I can give you. Writer to writer. I'm sorry. Alright, guys. That's the review. As always, thanks for being here. Thanks for being patient with me. Like, share, subscribe, do all the YouTube things. Check down in the description. I got 2 books that are commercially available, ready to go for your reading enjoyment. They're both really damn good. 3rd book is on the way. Go check out our Teespring store if you want awesome t-shirts, humanity canceled, comedy canceled, and more designs on the way. Go subscribe to my friend Cait's channel. She's my partner. You know her from the live shows. And, yeah, I'll see you next time. Be well, my friends. Man, that was a ham-handed wink.